So thanks to everybody for coming out, and let's get this first discussion underway. So something I kind of wanted to ask just the group in general is when an athlete wants to build a brand, then what are the first steps that they should be taking? Because I think the biggest thing to walk away today with is kind of what are those first steps, you know? And I'm going to pass this to my guys.
That's the first step.
I get asked this question all the time. I get asked this question all the time. And right now, a lot of these young guys, it's always focused around like, how do I get more Instagram followers? And it's like, well, who are you? Does anybody know who you are? Do you have a story? That's great. We know the number on the back of your jersey, but what are you doing when you go home? What are you doing with your wife? What did you grow up doing? And I think that is exactly what social media is for, to be able to tell that story. The old school way was to do a bunch of media and do a bunch of radio, but now you have it at the click of your fingers, and it's that much easier to start telling your story, which this one does a pretty decent job of doing. Sometimes people think a little bit too much, but yeah, I think that's the first part, is knowing your story and where to begin with that.
No, going with that though, like I want to get into that a little bit, Trevor.
Great, let's go.
So there's been some heat thrown your way over the last, well, even couple weeks.
It's a regular thing.
How do you handle that though?
And well, it started for me in high school. I had no friends, and I had no idea why anybody didn't like me, and no one could tell me. And I was just miserable. And so I finally decided that I was going to graduate high school early to get away from it because I hated it so much. And then maybe a week after that or 2 weeks after that, I'd gotten up at like 5 in the morning, gone to YMCA, do some pool workouts, work on baseball, came back home, showered, was looking in the mirror, and was like, you know, I don't know why people don't like me. I like myself. I'm intelligent, I'm a good student, I'm gonna go to college. It's pretty cool to me, and I just decided that, you know, I don't really care anymore. I'm just, as long as I can look in the mirror and like myself, I'm cool with it. And so then from that day forward, I just do whatever I want to do, really, as long as I hold myself to the standard that I expect of myself. Have good morals, good character, treat people well, you know, abide by the golden rule. And as long as I can do those things, then it doesn't really matter much to me what some random person on Twitter says, what some reporter says, what the narrative about me is. And as I've grown in my career and studied marketing and stuff like that, being in the news is better than not being in the news. It's a little bit of a struggle to get in the news in Cleveland, so I just find ways to interject myself.
In what ways do you censor yourself? Do you censor yourself as a player that is opening up?
What ways do I censor myself?
Yeah.
I guess, like, for me, I try not to be on social media or in the media at all when I'm emotional about something.
Okay.
And I think people get the misconception on that I'm online a lot and mad, and like when I respond to trolls or whatever, that I'm angry or that they got to me or something like that. It's not, it's completely opposite. Like, I look at that as like a chess match, like a mental chess match. Like, you say something to me and I'm gonna say something witty back, and then we're gonna have this like wit battle that I kind of enjoy. But back to just conducting myself with, you know, character and integrity. I don't ever want to like tear someone down unnecessarily. But I do think that standing up for yourself against people who say, you know, social media is a weird thing nowadays. Anyone can say anything to you at any time with no repercussions. And I think kids a lot of times face that in school. some bully comes up and says something to him, and if you just take it all the time, at some point you internalize some of it as much as you try not to. So I believe in standing up for myself and saying something back. I don't go out of my way to attack anybody, but if someone says something to me, I feel like it's fair game to respond in a manner that's consistent with how they attacked me. I try not to curse. I try not to say anything super derogatory. I try not to attack the other person's character or stuff like that. But not a whole lot of censorship, to be completely honest.
From a branding company's standpoint, marketing company standpoint, how do you handle player issues when they are not things that we're talking about with Trevor, but player issues that kind of come up that maybe a player not censoring themselves about?
Yeah, so the first thing that we do once we start working with anyone is that we go all the way back to post number 1, because there's a lot of things that probably were put out there way before we even came to the picture. And there were a lot of things that people said where they weren't censoring themselves when they were at a point in their life, or maybe they're not at the level of maturity that they're at today. And so I fully believe that who all of us are in this room today probably isn't the same person that we were when we were 13 years old. Hopefully not, right? Yeah. I'd like to think if people are taking time out of their day to come here. But it starts there. So it starts with going back, and for some reason, 2013 keeps being the year. I think it was the year that Twitter and Facebook became such a huge thing. But it starts there. So it's going back and figuring that out. But then moving forward, you have to just figure out who you are. And just like what Jacqueline said, it's all about authenticity. So as long as you are able to say, here's who I am, and this is what I'm going to put out there, then you will always win. Because at the end of the day, there will always be people who are against you. And I've experienced it on very opposite ends of the spectrum recently. We are coming off of a very rough season with the Minnesota Vikings, and Kirk Cousins has gotten the brunt of it. I mean, it's been rough. I mean, I had an employee I called one day and I heard it in her voice. I said, get off social media. And she's like, how did you know? I said, I know that you're on Kirk's social. I know you're going through comments right now. Get off, because it'll take over your mental stability. But then on the opposite end, then I have Matt Carpenter, who is just loved. You know, he's been a Cardinal all his life. Cardinals fans are extremely loyal, and I have yet to see a single negative comment. But it goes to the point of it's all about being authentic. As long as you're willing to say, here's who I am and here's how I'm going to put it out there, and just like he was talking about, you can't lose, and people are going to hate on you. But what I always say is that you have to think, what is that person going through? So it doesn't come down to, they're not mad at you. They're mad at the fact that you did something. Maybe they deep down wanted to be a professional athlete. Or maybe they hate the fact that you're willing to say, people were mean to me in high school, but now I'm going to stand up for myself. And so you pull something out that's an insecurity of theirs, and they're reacting to it. So what you have to do is just figure out, how do I be the bigger person? And you can either react or you can respond. But that's what it comes down to. But again, as long as you're authentic, they can't really come at you because you know who you are.
Yeah, and I think one thing to add on top of that, I mean, being authentic is very important, but I mean, being human, you know what I mean? I think at the end of the day, you guys are all blessed with amazing talent, right? And I think fans being able to realize that you guys are humans as well is a very important thing. So like hearing that story from Trevor, that resonates with so many fans, so many. So if you can make that connection with fans, everything will then, become so clear, right? Because then brands are going to want to attach themselves to athletes that are showcasing who they are on and off the field. Because nowadays, I think you can't be fake. You can't just say that you are this person when you're not. If you're authentic, like everyone's saying on this panel, and will probably be brought up 100 times tonight, it's so important. But taking that a step further, I always tell the athletes I'm working with, like, to be human, be yourselves, and then you're going to attract fans, and you're going to attract people that are going to be good for your life. And that's you guys are all incredible humans, incredible athletes. If you can take that a step further and connect with fans in a really positive way and showcase who you are, the possibilities are endless. So
I want to kind of go from there, like with taking it and looking at it from maybe a negative standpoint of where you're trying to overcome things, but look at the legacy aspect of it to where you're building something positive. What are your guys' first steps? I want to ask what each of your definition of legacy is first. What does a legacy mean for a branding company? What does a legacy mean for an athlete? What does a legacy mean for events? For like, what does that mean for each of you?
I guess I'll kick it off, just to go in order. Yeah, so as Kyle was touching on, I lead up sports, the company that raises money for nonprofits. And what we do is anyone can enter and win these experiences for $10. So instead of going to a high net worth individual that's donating $5,000, $10,000 in an auction, you donate $10 and you're able to win this experience with the athlete, with the talent. So it can be anything from going and being an extra in Star Wars to having John Legend sing your wedding, or go get a haircut with Bryce Harper, or give Kobe Bryant a high five as he runs out in his final game. So from my standpoint, legacy, when I'm talking to these different agents or talking to studios, what we really want to do is we want to create something that is low lift for the athlete, because we understand how much time you guys are putting into your day-to-day of making sure that the performance on the field is obviously at an all-star level. So I think from a legacy point of view, we really want to make sure that you guys are connecting with the fans, just to bring up being human again and showcasing who you are and being able to really give back, because community obviously is so important, right? So the whole More Than an Athlete movement is a very real thing. Utilizing your following, utilizing who you're connecting with to make the world a better place. If you're able to do that in your individual communities, whether it's Arizona, whether it's Boston, no matter where you are you're playing, I mean, you're going to come back in 30 years and you're going to be able to really leave something that's positive. So whether that's raising money for a Little League field in the neighborhood, or like Trevor was saying, doing something in Cleveland where you're resonating with anti-bullying, something like that, right? Partnering up with nonprofits or entities that align with who you are as a person, and really putting forth an effort like you do on the field, but then off the field, you'll leave a legacy that you'll come back 30, 40 years from now and you'll be able to make a really positive impact. That's how I think about it. You guys put in such hard work on the field. If you do just a quarter of that off the field as well, I mean, you guys are going to do some really positive stuff. So
I think to play off that, legacy is understanding that you have a platform, whether you choose to have it or not. The fact that you are a professional athlete, you have a platform and you have eyes on you, and then it's deciding how are you going to use that to impact other people. I think that's what's really cool, and to meet people and hear stories about how people are giving back. That's what it's about, because at the end of the day, what I like to say is, if I teach one of my clients one thing, or I get involved in one cause that they're involved in, and they impact one person, they save one life, or they impact one team, and then that person impacts one more person, that's how we slowly start to change kind of the world around us, and then that's how it expands. So I think it's figuring out, like, what are you passionate about, and how can you leverage what you know and what you love to then give back to other people.
I echo that. I think, authenticity is what, everybody needs to really take a look at. But for me, legacy is when you're done playing, what are people going to remember you for? On and off the field. What are people going to remember you for? When you pass away, are they going to say, he was a great player or he was a great human? And so for us, it's always looking at what is that impact. And I always tell the athletes, unless you have a passion for it, unless it's real to you, I don't want you doing it. Because people will see through it, people will know it. But I think for us, one of the largest campaigns of impact that we saw was being able to work with J.J. Watt on his Hurricane Harvey relief efforts. And today, because of what he did, he's known as much as a philanthropist as he is as a football player. And that speaks volumes about him as a person. So when you're talking legacy, it's what impact have you made and how are people going to remember you?
Yeah, same here. And I keep coming back to this story in my head the other day. When was it? Super Bowl week. I was with my client Patrick Mahomes when he won MVP at Honors, and I'm sitting next to him. He goes up, wins MVP, wins Offensive Player of the Year, and then comes up the Walter Payton Man of the Year. And I looked at him and I said, that's the real goal. That is literally the real goal. Those guys up there, like what Kyle Long, what the Long family, Chris Long with the Long family did this past year, just everything that they're doing is so incredible. And Patrick looked back at me and was like, let's figure it out. And that's just it. And he was like totally raw to the thought that he doesn't know exactly yet what he wants to do as far as his foundation goes. Like, he's going to have a foundation this year, but we're not jumping to the gun on exactly what it's going to be yet because he doesn't know. He's 23 years old. Literally, all of this has come at him like not out of nowhere, but so quickly. So now it's just navigating and figuring out those next steps. And like you guys are saying, it's authenticity, making sure you know what it is that you care about, and that's what people are going to remember you for. And then I come to you, like right after this conversation, kind of tying back into social media, which gets my brain going nuts. But like, he's telling this incredible story, which I've never heard that story. As a consumer, as a fan, I never heard that story that you know, didn't get along with kids, or you had a tough upbringing in high school. I don't know why you haven't told that story, or maybe you have somewhere and no one knows, or like, why have you not shared that on social, but tying that into a foundation. I just asked him, I said, do you have a foundation? And he was like, well, we're working on it. And I'm like, it should be anti-bullying, like 100%. Like, that is literally, no, you
So the answer to that, two answers to that. I have told that story. It's not a sexy story, and so national media doesn't pick up on it because they like to paint me as an internet bully. So it would be very anti-narrative to say that I was actually bullied, which is partially why I started my own production media company, so I can tell that story, and so athletes can tell their stories free from all the traditional media BS clickbait. The other part of it is I don't yet have a foundation because I wanted to make sure that my baseball career was up to a standard that I expect for myself. Because ultimately, if I'm going to do anything else off the field, that has to be first, because that's what gives me my platform. So I wanted to make sure to do things kind of in order and not split attention. I'm a firm believer that when I commit to something, I'm going to commit to it 100% and do that to my full capacity. So those are the two things that you brought up. As far as legacy goes, the thing that stands out to me is change. And that's probably just me personally, but I don't think that you can really create a very strong, lasting legacy unless you change something. Whether it's changing an industry, changing someone's life, changing the economic state of an area, stuff like that. Because if there's no change, people don't remember it. But as soon as something changes, then first people are resistant to it, but it grabs their attention, and then once it proves out to be beneficial, then they remember that moment, that their life changed, or their city changed, or their perception of someone changed, or the world changed, or something like that. And those are the events that are remembered in history, that are written about in history books. Storming of the beaches at Normandy. Everybody remembers that as a moment that, like, this thing happened, and like something changed that day, whether it was America's interjection into the war and stuff like that. So the people that died on the beach, their names specifically may or may not be remembered, but that moment that they were a part of is remembered because something changed. So that's kind of how I look at it. I also see inefficiencies. That's like what I focus on. Inefficiency in industry and training and relationships and whatever else. For whatever reason, that's how my brain works, and that's what I look at. And so, like, all around, I see opportunities for change. And now that baseball is to the level, my performance on the field is up to the level that I expect of myself, and I feel like it's set up for lasting. To be a long-term thing instead of just a flash in the pan. I look at my next 10 to 15 years as having a very solid platform to launch these things from, and that's what I'm kind of in the process of doing. Really starting this off season. I got a ton of plans going forward, so I'm excited about those.
I kind of want to jump in on that too, because that's one of the big reasons why I wanted to have this event, was that baseball especially is one of the sports. We started working heavily in football over this last year, and I've started to realize that football is an industry where players seek out branding, they seek out marketing, they seek out endorsements and sponsorships, and extra ways to make money. Where over the last 6 years I've been working in baseball, and Tyler and I have talked about this a ton, where baseball's not really that way. And players are a lot more humble, and it is part of that culture where I think it's part of going up through the minor league system, where you're not used to being able to get those deals and get those sponsorships. A lot of guys end up not trying. And so it kind of goes to that question of when Trev's talking about change and doing something that creates change, is where is that first step? So I feel like within baseball, like that needs to change first. That players are empowered to understand and be aware that, and I know there's some agents in here, I have nothing against agents, love agents, but there's a lot of agents that don't do what they say they're going to do, and they don't do what they promise to do. And that could be if you want a charity set up, that it just so happens that the agent doesn't necessarily make money off the charity, well, they will off the Nike deal. So maybe that's something where you should reach out to somebody that can help you set up a foundation. I highly suggest you don't go start your own charity. There's so many things that could go wrong with it, but if you find the right people you can trust to help run that, start that, that's one thing. So then it's going to that next step of, okay, well, what do I do? What's that thing that I can change, that I can be passionate about, like Jacqueline was saying. And that's, I feel like, the toughest part is, what are you passionate about? You're passionate about baseball, you're passionate about your family, Trevor's passionate about drones. Like, there's different things, and what's that thing that is your life story that could be used to create world change? Like, I think Jacqueline touched on a good point with that, man. Like, you and I have talked for years about this stuff, and I've never even thought of it that you should be doing bullying. And I'm not saying that's what you should be doing, but I think that you could make a massive impact.
I bully a lot of people. That is what I do.
You're in that line is bullying. So, but in all seriousness, like that is a cool opportunity to be able to do that, and that was through your own story.
But I think taking time to figure out what your passion is.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to know today or tomorrow. Expose yourself to different opportunities, whether it's being at an event, lending your name for a nonprofit. These are all different things that will help you determine what your passion is, but it will also expose you to some great people. Because when your playing career is done, depending upon how long you played and your success, those are relationships that you can utilize moving forward. And they're going to be good relationships. They're people that are involved in these nonprofits and these passions that you can connect with and you can utilize. So don't put that stress on yourself that I have to figure it out right now. Take the time, expose yourself to some different things, and really figure out, that's where I want to be. And then you can put your effort towards that.
And one additional thing to just kind of build off of what Trevor was saying, like, there are brands out there now that are actively seeking out athletes that are not your traditional, like, Pepsi and your soft drink or car. Like, when I think of Trevor Bauer, I think of obviously you on Twitter and how, like, your interactions with Pitching Ninja and like how you think about pitching in a different way, right? When I think about that from a marketing perspective, then I get to take a step back and I think of a Microsoft or a brand that might be in STEM or education, and then you being able to educate the next generation of baseball players through their different types of tablets or different devices that they have. So it's a less traditional partnership where you're being able to authentically integrate a brand, and that's the way consultants and brands are thinking about sports marketing moving forward. Gone are the days where you're just putting a face of an athlete on a billboard and that's what they want. It's got to be a little bit different nowadays. You have to actually be interested in their product and be interested in what that product stands for, and then you can create a whole content series around things like that. And I mean that's something that Jacqueline and One Up, they do a great job at, is showcasing the content. I mean you're working on that with a lot of your athletes, right? A lot of content series and things like that, right? So
Just quickly to add on, I think we worked with a speed skater, a U.S. Olympic speed skater, who, for those of you that don't know, they don't make money. They're looking for endorsements. And the company, her largest company, sought her out specifically because she did an anti-bullying campaign. They were looking to find an athlete to sponsor. It was the day before Thanksgiving at 11 o'clock at night. I got the email saying, I noticed your entire month-long campaign about anti-bullying, raising awareness, going and speaking. And it was a simplistic campaign, but that's what got her largest sponsor ever. Because she had that exposure of tying herself to a nonprofit that company was also passionate about. So they literally, he said, as he was flying across the country to go visit his family, he Googled anti-bullying and Olympian, and her name was the first to pop up.
Because I can tell you guys, like from an agency perspective, like when brands are looking into building these deals, you're creating a scorecard, you're creating a database of different athletes that are aligned with these different objectives that these brands are looking for, right? So if there is a brand that's looking to go do a huge anti-bullying campaign next year, they're doing a quick search of social media, they're doing a quick search of these different accounts in Major League Baseball, let's say 1,000 different athletes, and then they'll narrow that down to 100, and then they'll look at that scorecard and they'll create different criteria that align with their specific campaign. So you don't need to have 10 million followers on Instagram to go out and do a great brand deal, as long as you really passionately care about that specific anti-bullying or whatever aspect that the marketing campaign might be around. So
we just started doing it with Brent Suter, who's here. And anyone who's in the Brewers organization knows that Brent doesn't go anywhere without his reusable water bottle. And like that's the thing. We actually reached out to the Brewers social media team and said, do you have any photos of Brent with the water bottle? They had an entire folder worth of photos. So there's a specific brand. Well, we actually just helped Brent get his Instagram up and running literally 3 weeks ago. So he has a few thousand followers. But we reached directly out to this brand and said, look, here's an entire folder of photos directly from the Brewers. They posted a photo on their Instagram story last week. We took all the metrics and sent it over, and now we're negotiating a deal. And he's gonna make, a good chunk of money. But besides that, it's about the fact that he actually cares about it. So you have to kind of think, like, what am I using in my everyday life that I love and that I'm telling people about without getting paid? And I promise you, like, these brands would love to pay you because it will convert. Because you guys all know when you see a hashtag ad and you see someone do a tweet and you know it's just for the money. You know right away. But when you see that someone was already doing all these things and now all of a sudden it's a campaign and they're hashtagging partner and it doesn't come across as, being a total ad, people are going to buy those products.
So I want you to take that transition the next 30 minutes of this with bringing in Tyler. So I wanted you to be on this panel originally. I didn't know if you were going to do that or not yet. But Tyler's one of the best athletes I've ever seen being able to self-promote himself and get endorsements and sponsorships. And I feel like he is the person to be able to have as a mentor for other baseball players and be able to get endorsements. He's doing things the right way. So when you're going out and basically getting your own endorsements from brands, what are you relaying to those brands? How are you going about it? How are you picking the brands and getting that jump started with the wireless mic?
Yeah, I think it's the same thing that they're all saying. I think mostly the products that I'm reaching out for are products that I already use, protein powders, snacks, just random stuff that I'm already using throughout the day. And I think it's, for me, with spending not a lot of time in the big leagues and not having that big of a following, I think you have to find companies who are at the right time in their process of building up their company to where you can catch them before they have the leverage on you. So I think if you can provide value for them up front without asking for something in return, I think then after you do that, they're more willing to provide value for you. So I think if you can frame it in a way that you will provide value for them, I think the company is more receptive to doing it.
So how are you finding to be able to frame that for yourself?
I mean, there's a lot of different ways, but a lot of it's through Instagram DMs. A lot of these companies, they have someone running it, so they're checking their DMs constantly. So if I tell everybody it's a numbers game. So if I hit up 10 companies and one replies with a deal, that's a win. But it takes finding those companies that are in the right situation to be able to work with you and doing that a bunch of times, which not a lot of athletes are willing to put in that work.
It's amazing what a DM will take you. That's how Scooter and I met.
For sure. I mean, that's how we met.
That's how we met.
I saw that you an athlete around, DM'd you, went for coffee, and talked for 4 hours.
It's the big thing is that I think a lot of players don't understand that there is an opportunity with pretty much any brand. It's just how you go about it. Some companies are checking their DMs, and some companies aren't. But figuring out what it is, that value that you're trying to add. It's like you and Scooter, it was, we both connected on the same interests. You know, is what the company was about, what I was about, and what you guys were interested in from the philanthropy side. And when I think when you're figuring out what companies that you want to work with, it's what's your story, what's your connection with them, and how are you going to add value to them? It's business on both ends of the deal, you know. And I think that baseball is obviously, it's a sport with no salary cap that a lot of athletes from other sports look at as this huge opportunity where guys are getting massive contracts on the field, but it's a very, very big gap as far as who's getting paid. And I think that it doesn't matter if you're on the side of it where you're asking for $300 million or the side of it to where you're a rookie league player, that I don't think that means that there's no opportunity on either end of you for being able to get deals. I think you're on the side of it where you're an 8-time All-Star, that you do have that opportunity to get bigger deals. You know, you can land bigger deals, bigger brands, or as long as you have that correlation, that connection, that connects your story. You know, and then when you're coming up and like being in your situation, you have big league time, and it's a situation where I think that you do add that extra value to brands because you're promoting them, and you know how to do it. You're taking pictures.
And there's a lot of guys, I mean, throughout the whole minor leagues that, I mean, 3-4 years ago, all we care about is getting products, you know, all free product, that's all I want, because it's cool to have a whole bunch of packages at your locker. You know? So like, if your agent is sending you a bunch of cleats, like it's cool to come in there and be like, dang, I got a lot of stuff today. Right. So I've talked to multiple athletes that just want free products, you know, and that's super easy.
Does anybody else have any questions? This is what we're going to do now, and I know we're running a little behind, but open it up to any questions you have for the panel, any add-ons that you want to put into anything we kind of discussed as far as branding, legacy, anything like that goes, even panelists as well. What do you got, Bruno?
I could say that when you talk about legacy, obviously you talk about being able to connect with your fans, and I think Dad, for example, he was ahead of his time, so he connected with the fans. He did things. There was no media attention. He didn't want any media attention anyway, but I think the stories were very organic throughout his career, that people knew that he cared about people, and the things that he did kind of took over and went beyond baseball. That's why we still talk about him, you know, 47 years later. The brand is still strong because of who he was off the field. So being able to really connect, you know, and people don't know this, but he was actually a spokesperson for Panasonic. He was a spokesperson for Eastern Airlines. He was a spokesperson for Gatorade. You go down the line, he actually did PPG, Pittsburgh Paints and Glass. He took that franchise to the Caribbean. So he was actually way ahead of his time. He took care of business on and off the field, and I think that becoming passionate about your beliefs, you become really an activist. Is what you become, and right now it's a lot easier with social media. You don't have to really travel anywhere. You can do it from your own, you know, locker room, if you will, in terms of being able to connect and be very powerful with your message.
And so, kind of before, if nobody else has any questions, I want to make sure that everybody gets everything in they want to get.
Quick question. I'm curious to see in the kind of the media age we're in, how teams are supporting the players that are making their initiative, start a foundation, or being active in their community. Because we know teams have that responsibility for their brand, but are they putting resources into supporting their bigger, you know, personalities or talents that want to make an initiative for themselves to go out and get back? Are you finding as a player that you're being supported from the system, and those that work with the players, are you getting pushback or getting support from the teams to support the work your players want to do?
I think it depends from our experience. we have always been engaged with the team that they're playing, just so that they're aware of what's going on, as well as their agent and PR. But we found kind of from team to team, it even varies as to how much they're willing to do. Sometimes they're willing to do a small monetary donation. Other times, if it's a larger event, they're wanting their PR people there, they're wanting their teams involved, their team members involved. So it's kind of been a case by case for us. I can't say flatly across that we've seen anything consistent.
Is this one? Yeah, okay. I've found very little support from Cleveland on that stuff. I tried, it was mentioned earlier that I'm really big into drones, and STEM was mentioned earlier as well. I'm super passionate about that stuff. I taught myself CAD so I could design my own drones. I build everything from scratch. I taught myself how to do it back in 2014 when there was no resources on the internet, just because I really wanted to do it. And there's a high school in Cleveland, Max Hayes High School, that's for, it's a STEM high school for inner city kids. And so I've tried to do a lot of work with them. Actually, they were the last donation on my charitable campaign last year. I donated close to $70,000 to the school to go directly to math, science, stuff like that. In that process, though, like I had to handle it basically all on my own. A group of the year before that, a group of kids had come out to the ballpark, and I gave a presentation on how I used CAD to design drones, to have a hobby, and how it's not a bad thing to be a nerd and an athlete. And so if you're either one of them, like don't hate on the other side, you know. And then a group of them came up and asked if I would sponsor their robotics team. And I said, okay, here's what you need to do. You need to write out a formal proposal and come up with a budget, figuring that this would be like a good experience for them to, you know, when you're making a proposal asking for money, have something to give to someone. And I said, if you do that and you send it to me and you get it to me, I'd be more than happy to talk to you guys about sponsoring it. And so they were all excited, and the team representative said that they would handle it and negotiate the transfer of information, and then I just never heard back. I had another thing where I was going to sponsor a drone building competition, so give like a couple directives. The drone has to be able to take off, go to a spot automatically, come back, and if it can carry a certain payload, or pick a certain payload up and carry it back, then you get bonus points, stuff like this. Basically, kind of what Amazon is trying to do with drone delivery stuff. And I was going to make it a citywide like competition for schools that have robotics programs and wanted to enter. I was going to finance the whole thing myself. And then through connections that I have people from Amazon, have people from DJI and Unique and different drone companies come out to watch a competition. That's almost like a talent scout situation. And again, relied on the team to help promote this, and it never went anywhere. So neither of those things ever came to pass, which is frustrating on my end, but it teaches me, it's just another instance that teaches me that if you want to do something, just do it yourself, or hire someone specifically to do it so that it gets done. I think too often athletes have very good ideas and then no support around them, whether it's, as Kyle mentioned earlier, from the agency side, that there's no monetary incentive to do it, or if it's a team side where it's like, yeah, well, you know, we don't really have time for this, or we're focused on other stuff, or whatever the case may be. Part of developing your legacy is, like as we've all talked about, is understanding what you're passionate about. And if you try to do something that you're passionate about and it goes nowhere, don't stop. Just find different ways to do it. So that's been my experience with one organization, if that helps at all.
I can speak on that a little bit because I used to work for a full service agency, full service NFL agency for about 4 years. So I was the director of marketing there. Obviously worked with 10 plus agents, we had a publicist, we had community relations, everything, and I was just marketing. And I got so frustrated with the gaps in this industry, also being married to a professional athlete. My husband's David Dahl, and just kind of seeing that how big of a gap there is both on the agency side, not to bash any agents, but on the agency side, and then on the team side as well. Just so many people, like, bottom line, right? At a team, they have their goals, their initiatives, their brand strategy, what do we have to get out this year, and that's coming from the league offices too. Same in the NFL, even to a bigger extent, and then same on the agency side, what's your bottom line? And I think you just nailed it. It's like, if you can't have anyone who's helping you with that from those two resources, then hire someone who can. And this is so crazy to me, I could go on a long tangent, but I won't. I'm sure you guys too. But I had a sit down with Brad Boxberger's wife. She'd be totally fine with me talking about this. I freaking love Anna Boxberger to death, and she was talking about this charity event that she's wanting to do next week, and she had no idea. She, what do I do? How do I do this for social media? And I'm like, well, what are you guys doing? Like, what, what's is the team helping? Well, we just signed with the Royals, and what about the agency? She's like, I don't know. Like, am I supposed to ask them for that? Like, yes, ask them for that. Like, that is 100% what people like me and all of us are here for. Like, you should 100% be using the resources that you have. And you all sat down, I'm talking to the players right now, you all sat down and were pitched a million promises in the world by your agent and by teams and by everyone promising you the world of what they're gonna offer for you off the field. Well, hold them to it and literally ask them, say like, okay, well, what should I be doing on social media? I have clients nonstop text me, whether it's just a caption help or anything on their foundation, just quick questions. Like, that's what I'm here for. Like, I'm not just sitting around twiddling my thumbs. Like, I want to be asked those sort of questions. And as soon as you're allowing people, like, you don't know what you don't know. Like, my husband doesn't know what he doesn't know. Like, ask people that do know. Like, I am a marketing expert. I am social media. Like, let us do our job, because your job is to go and play baseball and continue to build your brand on the field so that we can help you build it off the field. Now I'm going on a full-on tangent right now, but to answer your question, there is a huge gap. There's a lot of teams who aren't, that maybe isn't their number one goal to help Trevor what he's doing, with a local school, because it's not part of the Cleveland Indians Foundation, whatever it's called, I don't know. So yeah, there is a huge gap, and it's across all sports, unfortunately.
I mean, the reality is once you leave the team, that staff there is no longer supporting you. They're supporting the members of that team. So we often say, even on the foundation side of things, or the nonprofit side of things, you can't rely solely on the team, because when you're gone, they are not going to be there. So you need to have someone that's going to be looking out for the best interest of you within that.
With that being said, though, to look at the other side of it as well, like coming from somebody that's worked at the Red Sox, the Padres, I really recommend you guys building strong relationships within the organization. Although they might not, in some cases, obviously look out for you, it's an organization by organization. There are a lot out there where if you go out there and you build strong relationships with the president or the corporate partnerships team, I mean, these guys are bringing in millions upon millions of dollars in sponsorship a year, and these brands that are partnering with the teams want to work with athletes to activate these sponsorships, and they want to work with guys that want to be engaged, that are easy to work with, that have great personalities, and all of you guys do. So if you can build that relationship internally at the team, get these guys to understand that, hey, we need to go do a content shoot tomorrow. Who's somebody that I can call on and I can rely on? And they can call on you guys because you guys are building up that relationship internally. That's something like very powerful that you can do very easily within your organization. And obviously, your number one priority is performing on the field, but when you do have a little bit of time, spending that extra moment, going up in the front office, shaking some hands, meeting some people. I think it was Jesus Aguilar last year, after he won the final vote, he went up in the front office and he shook everybody's hand, thanking everybody for being able to be there and calling everybody and getting everybody hyped up around the All-Star game. Like, that content went viral. I saw that. I'm not the biggest Brewers fan, but I saw that and I'm immediately a fan of his. So if you guys can go out there, take that extra time, build that relationship within people in the front office, they'll look out for you. I guarantee you.
And the teams are looking for those marketing opportunities too. Like Liam, wherever it is. We right back there. So, like Sean Doolittle did a campaign with us, and he wanted the team to be able to sell the shirts from the stadium. And Fanatics is basically they own almost all the rights to doing shirts from merch stores. And so to let a company that has no MLB license to be able to sell from the stadium is unheard of. But Sean asked, and he said that he wanted his shirt being sold from there. He was willing to go that extra mile and sign autographs in the stadium, and they took that to Fanatics, and that followed through with Liam as well. Liam ended up following up and doing 3 more up in the stands, signing autographs of his shirt, where the money was going to his cause. It was a good PR opportunity for the team now to advertise that a player's in the state, like in the concourse, while pregame's basically going on, and that's a very rare opportunity. There's other instances like Falcon Urco, we were able to raise an extra $14,000 in an hour, just because he asked the team if he could go do a chalk talk before the game. So he talked for 40 minutes before the game started, and $14,000 later of people buying that extra ticket to go listen to Paul talk for 45 minutes. That was an easy way for him to make a bunch load of money for his foundation, add extra value for the White Sox to be able to sell a ticket for the fans to have an opportunity to go be face to face and hear an intimate experience that they normally wouldn't have. So when you're thinking of ways that you can self-benefit, whether it's for your own foundation, whether it's for a business that you've got going, a bunch of you guys that have businesses, like Hater, and like, if you have these things that you have a self-interest with, there's probably a way that it can tie in with the team to be able to benefit them as well. And you got to think about it from their perspective. They want to make money, right? They're a business. And you guys know that you're all in as part of the business. I'm in as part of the business. I'm not even a player. And it's one of those things where what value can we give the team in exchange for what we want? If you're wanting to sell stricken outdoors in the stadium, I'll bet there's a way that you can figure out how to do that. You know, it's just figuring out how does that add value to the team. So think about it from that perspective. If you guys have self-interest, whether it's a charity or whether it's your business, because the team will listen if they can make money off it. If it'll sell more tickets, if it'll sell more shirts, they'll listen. And that's what I found is we don't have an MLB license. And we've sold in Yankee Stadium, we've sold in Dodger Stadium, we've sold in Oakland Coliseum, we've sold in stadiums that we shouldn't be in. You know, we've been in the Rams Stadium for football games, we've been in the Seahawks. We don't have an NFL license either. We're not licensed to sell in professional stadiums. But what the interest is that these opportunities to put player-driven campaigns into the stadiums with the teams is giving their marketing team an opportunity to push more sales and get positive PR. You know, so think about it from that perspective. There is, what I've realized with what I do, there really is no line in the sand that you can't cross. You just got to figure out what their self-interest is that matches with yours. And so.
Yeah, to add to Greg, that is point, like when I sign a rookie or a young guy, that is one of the first things I actually say to them is you need to, when baseball players, when they put it, I think they put it up on a bulletin board and it's like, come sign up for XYZ community relations event, and it might be going to a hospital at 8 a.m. on your off day, but that is just the first, I mean, you guys probably deal with this too, like, I know it's a pain in the butt, David, but it really is, like, that's that impression, that's exactly what Greg said, because it's usually a player relations girl or player relations person who's also relaying that information to the corporate partnerships team, who's going out and selling that, and it's, okay, well, he was at the United Way event, he was at this, he showed up on time, that's who I want to give, and maybe it's $3,000, $5,000 for a local appearance, but that's, you know, that starts initiates that first relationship with that brand. So I had to just touch on that because that is such a good reminder to sign up for it. I know we all have personal lives, we all want to enjoy the off days, but those little things can go a long way, and that might be the first start of if you go to a Special Olympics event and now you realize that's what you want your foundation to be about. That's what, like, those little things have to happen at some point. So I just wanted to touch on that point too. I don't hate the teams.
to that point too, I think everyone has their own agenda. You know, like that's what it comes down to, is that if you show an interest and ask, you know, whether you ask the team, how can I serve you? I'm a firm believer that if you take the idea of serving others, it will somehow come back to you. But at the same time, you may be thinking, well, you know, they're paying me, you know, they should be helping me, like they owe it to me. And maybe they do, but at the end of the day, if you show an interest in somehow moving the ball forward for them, I guarantee that they'll somehow get behind it, and then you get to use them just as much as they use you. Because if now they're behind you and they're endorsing you and they're helping you, either whether it's make connections or it's, you know, a philanthropic effort, and they're putting it on their social accounts that have millions compared to maybe your thousands, they're giving you access to their platform. So you kind of have to play the game just as much as they're playing you. I mean, that's what it comes down to. Because at the end of the day, like, everyone's disposable in some way. And one day, when the game is done and it's time for Career 2.0, they will not answer your calls. You know, like you're gonna call and say, hey, can I come back and get my old jerseys or the equipment I left in my locker? And it's like, oh, your contract ended yesterday, so you can't come back into the facility. So know that leverage the heck out of them as much as you can, but make them think that you're doing it to move their agenda forward.
And it'll keep that relationship too when you do retire, when you do move on. The more relationships you can build within the organization, maybe one day you need an investor in a company and it just so happens to be the owner of the team. You know, like there's those relationships you do want to build up. But with that, does anybody have any questions or any input before we move on to the next panel? Yeah.
One more question. So this is...
Extra.
Sure. Thank you. So I think we all understand kind of the transactional side of, you know, if it's going to affect the bottom line, you know, the agents don't want you to do it. But I guess this is a question for the marketing and the brand managers. How do you advise or manage a player when you start getting into those kind of controversial subjects? You know, if it's race, religion, politics, and maybe the player's own beliefs or, you know, the cause they want to go out for is maybe something that's against their fan base or against their organization, or, you know, even worse, against your own personal beliefs. How do you manage that from a branding perspective without, you know, thinking about your own bottom line? And maybe them, you know, there's, in the NFL, there's guys that come together and do the Players Coalition, standing up for, you know, police kind of brutality, and there's gun laws. And how do you kind of manage those guys when you know it's something that could affect their image or their brand?
I'll jump in first. It's interesting because it's like, well, with Kaepernick, for example, like,
yeah.
I honestly do agree with what he did. I don't agree with what how the messaging was carried out. And so that's where it comes to this instance for me where it's like, I think that was something that he should have sat down, and maybe he did, sat down with the team and discussed what the messaging was going to be, sat down with the Players Association, sat down with, discussed what the messaging was going to be, and created a unified message behind it. You know, is it police brutality? Is it racism? And Michael and I talked about this on this podcast, and it's one of those things where I think that there's a completely different conversation that's happening around Kaepernick right now if there was one unified message, if it was any of those messages. And so that's where I look at it from the perspective where if it's race, if it's religion, you've got to think about, is this something that is going to bring positivity? You know, all of those I think are going to bring positivity if your point is to make things better. So B, how are you going to structure your messaging behind that? What's your goal? What's your mission behind it? And how are you going to carry that out? And I think it's got to be really well thought through if you're going to do that. And I think that it does need to be done. Everybody in here has such a massive opportunity to create some powerful change. You know, like Nick, like we connected on doing the faith shirt. You know, like that was the second one that we'd ever done. And Brandon Barnes was the first shirt we ever did. It was the Praying Hands. And that was our best seller for years. And what it proves to me is that I think it's more of a fear of reaction, of a fear of retaliation for a lot of athletes for not wanting to step up and share their faith and be up front about it, you know. But it's great in the right, like I think that you did it the right way. You know, I don't even know if you thought about it, you know, you just wanted to do it.
That was the goal. I mean, at the start,
Yeah.
I just called you and wanted to make some shirts for teammates, and it turned into a pretty cool thing.
Right. So I think it's really the messaging. It's who you are, you know. So it's sitting down with one of these guys, you know, and talking about creating that voice behind it, because you have an awesome opportunity to create change in anywhere, any area that you want to. Just structure it right. Say the right things. You can even flip things that are super negative into super positive opportunities, you know, by jumping on that and building off of it. So, what's your input?
I think, you know, the question is, what is the motive?
Mm-hmm.
I think we live in a day and age where there's so much hate that it's, are you doing this to prove a point, or are you doing it because you actually want to see change? And I think I have a completely different perspective now, having a 1-year-old daughter, and I think ahead, and I see things that go on social media, and I see these things that personally freak me out to a point where it's like, what's it going to be like when she's a teenager? And so when I look at these issues, I think, one, you have a platform and you have to use it. But are you using it to create change, or are you using it because you want to be right? And so for me personally, we came out this past year, we rebranded our whole company, and we came out as a faith-based organization. And it was scary. And one of the girls who worked for me said, I don't think you should do it. You really shouldn't do it, because that's not the culture of sports. And I said, but you know what? That's the culture of my life. And I can't continue to show up to work and to do these things with athletes and to work with agents and to feel like I'm putting on one hat when I'm in this room, and then I'm putting on a different hat at church, and then a different hat when I'm with my family. And so it came down to the fact that I just said, this is who we are, and I'm just going to put it out there. And the right people have come our way, but I think, you know, to your point too, Kyle, is that the messaging is so important. And do you have something that's going to impact lives? And if that's what it is, go for it. But think it out, and also think about, what will the repercussions be? And how will it affect you? And will it affect your pay? And if you are going to end up in a situation like Kaepernick, where, you know, you're not having that coming in, if you maybe didn't have the career that he had leading up to that, can you survive on that? You know, and can you move forward? So just think it out and figure out, what is that going to look like for me?
I think for us, going back to, you know, how we determine who we're working with, our bottom line, I've said no to athletes that don't have the same values that we do, or that I do. And it wasn't an easy decision, and sometimes, because it could have been, you know, a substantial amount to our bottom line, but ultimately it goes back to our values and who we are as individuals and as a company.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think based on your question, the best thing that I can say is think about it. You know, think before you tweet. No, honestly, like, I do think you obviously think before. I think you think a lot. You think You asked me before we sat down. You said, "Why does everyone shit on me and not other football players?" So just think before you tweet. You think about your family. You think about your team's motives. You think about your partners. I know Cap did not have a strategy going into the kneeling. He didn't, originally it was sitting. He had no strategy at all. And obviously there was a lot of backlash immediately for him. My former agency worked with him on the complete revamp of everything and turning it into a foundational effort, donating $100,000 once a month. Had he had that plan put in place beforehand, I think it would have been a completely different reaction from the entire nation. But yeah, I think the biggest thing is, like, if you are going to come out and 100% be yourself, be authentic. Don't let Tim Tebow is a perfect example. Like, you can't not like him. You can't not like these guys who are being authentic. And there are going to be people. I always say this to my clients, there's going to be people who don't like what you say or don't like what you do, but the other 50% are going to like it. So you can't please everyone, so continue to be yourself and be authentic, but if you are going to come out and make a bold statement and a big move, just have a plan, talk to people, think about it beforehand and be able to act on it, and it's not just, some words, like, this is how I feel. How you feel about sexuality, whatever it might be, those sensitive subjects, that's fine, but have something to back it up and have a plan in place beforehand. my best
I think
advice.
that's where it really connects with Trevor, because Trevor's, like, there's a lot of people that love you, you know? You have a lot of fans. And you get a lot of people that don't like you too. But you know that, you're you. And I think that is that authenticity that shines through. And that's what creates this opportunity for you to create a real fan base. You know, so I think it's important.
Yeah, for sure. I guess I'm big on change, as I said earlier. And anytime you try to change something, whether it's an industry, someone's life, the way things are done in the country, stuff like that, there's going to be massive backlash and massive pushback because people in general are scared of change and are uncomfortable with it. One of my biggest goals is to change the baseball industry in a lot of different aspects. And so I just accepted long ago that I was going to take all the arrows in the back as the first person to kind of bust through and do certain things. And if things go correctly, like how I see them going, there's a lot more coming. But I truly believe that like it needs to change, and there's better ways to do things. And so just that resolve, like that's what I'm passionate about. I know that. And so regardless of what anybody says or does, like I wouldn't be fulfilled as a person not doing what I'm passionate about. You know, so that's kind of where I come down on it. But I think an important thing to note on that is you have to act on what you're passionate about. Just speaking about it or just talking about it is mildly helpful because it draws attention to it. But words without action are easily forgotten.
Yeah, and real quick, I just want to jump in there. I think these are all incredible points. I think creating a dialogue with the organization, but then also having a strategy is you have to have a strategy behind everything that you're doing. So, I mean, like, I've learned so much about Trevor in this last hour plus, right? I mean, this summer in Cleveland is going to be, obviously, all eyes are going to be on Cleveland. MLB All-Stars coming up. When I hear you describe that, I think you should do some type of summer of change type thing where each month maybe you're impacting a different part of the Cleveland community and you're building awareness around the things that you're passionate about. So like taking a step back, looking at the schedule that you guys have coming up this year, maybe there's some key moments that are in your city that your organization's putting together, and create that dialogue with the organization, because there's a lot of things that you can attach yourself to that they'll put money behind or they'll put marketing support behind if you take that extra effort and you just build out that kind of that dialogue with the organization. So I mean, like, I 100% think there should be some type of anti-bullying initiative that MLB and the Cleveland Indians do in July around the MLB All-Star Game. Like, hands down, and you should be the face of that. And I think that that should be, like, and that will, you will be the face of that within Major League Baseball. I mean, that's incredible, right? So, I mean, building that kind of dialogue, getting that started, that's how amazing things start, right?
So the fun thing about playing in Cleveland is, and with Francisco Lindor, is I get no attention, because MLB does have a stand-up shred hate campaign.
Yeah.
And Francisco Lindor is actually on their commercials and the face of that. So I agree with you. Just the unique position of being me.
For sure.
And the narrative that has been created around me by traditional media outlets, I'm sure has played a factor in me not being there.
I think too, I mean, think about just be your own media outlet. I mean, and especially because you have your media company.
Yeah.
But how cool would it be that you had a YouTube channel that was dedicated to anti-bullying, and it started with you, but then it spiraled into kids and your teammates and people in this room, and it started, and you kind of got, and at the end of the day, you could just sit back and be like, haha, Indians. You know, like I did it myself, but I think that too, if they're not going to do it, you can do it yourself.
Yeah, that's planned already. it's coming up. Yeah, that's good advice though. Going back to what I said earlier, like if people aren't going to help you, just do it yourself. I get really frustrated with people who complain about how the world is and talk about how, well, the world should be this way, and then don't do anything about it. And for a couple years, I complained about how the media treated me, and I didn't do anything about it. I just looked at myself and called myself a hypocrite and got off my butt and I'm doing something about it now. So I think it's been touched on a little bit. It's kind of scary for people to jump out there on their own. And I think that's where a lot of athletes get stuck, is they're scared of backlash, or they don't know how to do it themselves, or whatever the case is, they don't have the right help, and so then they don't end up doing anything. I've never really been scared of backlash, and so I have that advantage because I am willing to take those risks and go out and do stuff. A part of what I'm passionate about is helping people as well, and I want to help other athletes have that, I guess, that confidence and the support behind them to be able to do that and to get their messages out there and solve problems that they personally have that a bunch of other people have that they may not know that a bunch of other people have. You know?
Yeah, so just to wrap up this panel, I mean, Trevor has had a lot of conversations about kind of where he's going with his life off the field, and for players in the room, like, take a chance to pick his brain, because I really, really, really do, and that's why I asked him to be on this panel, believe that he's going to be able to help reshape the way that business in sports is done for athletes, and I'm very, very serious about that, and what he's going to be able to accomplish over these next few years, and especially once he's done playing. And so take advantage of that, pick his brain, follow what he's doing, because some of the stuff that he's got going on is going to be transformational. But thank you guys so much for being